What's going on, Lions fans? Welcome to the Pride Detroit YouTube channel. I'm Miko, once again joined by Morgan Cannon, one of the writers over at prideofdetroit.com. Morgan, how you feeling today, man?
Good, man. Like I'm excited that there's a lot of we're in the deep abyss of the off season right now, but I feel like there's a lot of stuff to chew on, right? Like there's been a lot of
Yeah.
Lions centric news out there with, Kirby Joseph was on NFL Network, um the receiver series dropping on Netflix. Amon Ra was on the pivot with like Ryan Clark and them. So yeah, and we're writing about all of it. If you do want to, have more to sink your teeth into over at prideofdetroit.com. But yeah, it's nice. About to get off whenever we do this and watch some of the receiver episode series.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, first and foremost, like you said, all of the stuff that maybe you don't see over here on the YouTube channel is being written about over on the website. So if you want to kind of get an idea or get an idea of what has been talked about recently on other platforms, definitely go check out prideofdetroit.com. There's a lot of good stuff over there. But like you said, Morgan, I do agree with you. Like, we're kind of in this weird season where, training camp is still a couple weeks away and there's going to be a lot more relevant news, but yet things are happening. And you're talking about finishing or starting to watch the receiver series, like once we kind of get done with this. But like, I pulled a Jeremy and sped through the series today. And if anybody wants to know how you do that, how do you watch 8 episodes in the span of like 3 hours? You basically just watch the parts of the player that you care about. And in this case, I cared about Amon-Ra St. Brown. I watched only the Amon-Ra St. Brown parts. So it's an easy way to get through 8 episodes in only a couple hours.
Power moves for sure. We're gonna
I'm,
we're gonna break that down in a future episode, future video, which I'm excited about. What were you gonna say?
no, I was going to say, like, when you have, 2 kids and a wife and you're also trying to, work, you don't have a ton of time to just sit down and just get cozy on the couch and just be able to power through 8 episodes like normal people. You have to, be a little more creative. So shout out to Jeremy for that little tip that, like, again, helped me kind of get through it. But like you were saying, we
Facts.
do plan on giving our own like recap and review of the series. Once Morgan kind of has a chance to go through it, and we're going to kind of get back together and just talk about some of the things that stood out most when it comes down to Amon-Ra St. Brown, and honestly, just like the job that Netflix did with that. But that's for a different day. Today, Morgan, we're going to be focused on the defensive side of the football. If you guys have been, staying tuned into some of the content we've been putting on the channel, we've been going through some of the rankings that PFF has been putting out about different position groups or just players ranked differently in regards to their position. So today we're actually going to be looking at linebackers. Last video we looked at running backs. Today we're going to look specifically at the linebacker group and where the Lions rank amongst the rest of the NFL according to PFF. And Morgan, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not entirely sure where I thought the Lions would fall on this list. I couldn't tell you exactly where, probably somewhere in the middle of the pack. They ended up much lower on this list, coming in at number 22. For you, is that too high, too low, just right? Like, what was your kind of initial feeling once you saw that ranking?
I thought it was, and obviously people are going to be like, oh, you're a homer, but I'm not saying the Lions linebacking unit needs to be top 10 necessarily, but I thought 22 is a little low, right? Because you have Jack Campbell, who's hopefully going to settle in at Mike and really like take strides as a linebacker in like year 2 and year 3 and so on. Alex Anzalone's probably coming off of his best year as a pro. You have Derek Barnes, who is just super athletic and really started to put things together last year. You have Malcolm Rodriguez. You have Jalen Reeves-Maybin. That's a really good linebacker room, man. That's deep. You have options. There's veteran players there. There's young players. It's a good mix. So, and it's coached by a really, really good position coach who's probably going to be a coordinator and maybe a head coach one day in Kelvin Shepard. But I thought 22 was a little low. I think they were the number one run defense in, DVOA and a couple
Mm-hmm.
other metrics last year. And it was the defensive line, but it was also the linebackers and everyone being willing to tackle. But yeah, I don't really understand this. That's a little low for my liking. I think they should be closer to, around 15 if we went and like looked at it like with a close eye. But what do you think?
I'm right there with you. I did think it's a little low. And I think for people that may be wondering, like, okay, well, why are we doing a video series about, PFF and their rankings? I think this is one of those good examples of it because what we see on the football field may not match up to what PFF is basing their rankings off of, which is typically their grades. And From a grade perspective, no, the Lions did not have some of the highest graded linebackers. But when we talk about efficiency and play on the field, Morgan, like you just alluded to a little while ago, they were a part of a defense that was the number one run defense in the NFL. And to the point that you were making, a lot of that credit goes to these linebackers being able to play sideline to sideline, being able to plug holes that the defensive line was opening up and being able to get tackles for loss and things of that nature. But yet, in a grading scale, for whatever that scale may look like for PFF, they were dinged for different things. I look at Jack Campbell specifically, didn't have the greatest, coverage grade. And that's something that is very difficult for a rookie linebacker to come in and do. But I also agree with what you were saying that Jack, I think, is only going to get better going into his second year. Coming into the NFL, I thought that was one of the things that he did best at Iowa was drop into zone coverage and be able to play that center field type of coverage role. And I think as we see him go into this next year, continue to work with Kelvin Shepherd, get more rapport with a guy like Alex Anzalone, his ceiling is only going to continue to climb. And once more, I do agree with your point on Alex Anzalone. I thought Alex played great last year. I think after the first 2 years where I think a lot of people were a little shaky on Alex, this past season, he absolutely was your best linebacker. He was 100% deserving of that C that's on his chest, and you saw it every single play. Going out there, making tackles, being disruptive in the pass game, getting sacks, like doing whatever was asked of him, doing it at a very, very high level. So I'm kind of right there with you. I think as high as 15 is probably where I would have had the Lions, probably as low as 17. Because I do understand that this is a league that the teams that have good linebackers, like they stand a cut above a lot of other players, and it's usually very tangible to see that.
Yeah, and like before we get someone in the comments, like we know PFF isn't the gospel, and like there are some like weird occurrences like with their grading system, and you're like, how does that shake out? And then you talk to like football people, and so it's just a tool, is what I'm trying to get at here. We're not, it's just really something to spark conversation off of. But I do agree about your point, like the teams that have like the Fred Warners, the Matt Milanos, it's like it's a cut above. Like, can Jack Campbell be that kind of player in the future? I do. I think he has all the tools. Big, can run. He's like 6'4", 250. Made that play against the Chiefs last year that stands out in my head. I think it was the Chiefs where he like flipped his hips and like, got back towards the middle of the field and the post and got his hand on the ball. I was like, oh snap! Like that was athletic, and he was a super highly graded athlete coming out of Iowa. Like I think he was, per Kentley Platty's RAS system, he was way up there, like a 9.8 something.
Yeah,
So,
almost a perfect score.
yeah, like a crazy numbers for the relative athletic score. And yeah, you look at Alex Anzalone, like, man, the people were really on him those first 2 years. Guys, that was a tough deal, right? Like that roster was, there was no Aiden Hutchinson or Josh Pascal or DJ Reader or Ali McNeil. Even then, you did have Ali McNeil, but like he wasn't the Ali McNeil of now. Like what I'm saying is it's hard to play linebacker when your defensive line isn't at least holding up a little bit. It's like akin to being a quarterback with a shaky offensive line. Life's going to be tough. So I'm high on this unit. I think it could be really rated highly next year because they have some young players in place that are still ascending. And they're deep too. Like I know this exercise for PFF is mostly focusing on like a pair of linebackers, since that's what's typically on the field in like base personnel these days.
Yeah.
But the lines are deep, man. Like and can you believe the turnaround from like 2021 when the linebacking unit was probably the worst aspect of the team to now where it's a pretty deep room. What do you think?
I think an argument could be made, Morgan, that this is probably the second best group on this defense. I mean, you could maybe even make a strong argument that they're the best unit as a group on this defense. I think the pairing of Aleem and DJ Reader is right up there, right? So that might be your best unit, but you still have to figure out what you have in your corners with Carlton Davis and Terrion Arnold, but that's a deep room now too, right? With Amik Robertson and this Rakestraw. Emmanuel Mosley coming back from injury, like that group is pretty deep as well. I think your safety group is kind of top heavy, right, with your two starters. When you're looking at Kirby and you're looking at Iffy, and maybe if you're throwing Brian Branch in there between corner or nickel, or between corner or safety, that probably helps one of those groups out. And then your edge group is really doing a lot of the lifting with Aiden Hutchinson. And then it's like you're just still trying to find that perfect pairing next to him. The linebacker group, though, starting with Alex, moving on to Jack, like those are two really good linebackers just to pair with. But at the same time, you still have Derek Barnes that really kind of broke through the ceiling last year and really started playing at a high level and was able to even, somewhat keep Jack Campbell at bay, even though he was a first round pick, and be able to start a lot of those games. And then, like you mentioned, you have Malcolm Rodriguez, who has started for you in the past. You have Jalen Reeves-Maybin, who has started for you in the past. That group from top to bottom has a good mixture of youth and veteran presence that, like I said, it's a little more proven. I think it's a real big toss-up between that group and maybe your defensive tackle group, or that group and your cornerback group. Like it's right there.
Yeah, and there's options too, so if someone does inevitably get dinged up at linebacker, all is not lost. There are guys who have starting experience who, you look at a guy like Malcolm Rodriguez, like when his contract's up, he might be looking to go somewhere else and play more, right? Like he might want an opportunity to play more on defense. Like he's going to see snaps this year because he's that kind of player and he'll see the field some and he'll be a core special teamer. But that's kind of where this team is now. And that's a far cry from where they were, 3-4 years ago, because it was not like that, man. There was the cupboard was a bear, so,
No, 100%.
Yeah.
So another thing that we've been doing, again, if you are new to these types of videos and new to us breaking down PFF's rankings, we do try to have conversations about the other teams in the NFL. And so, Morgan, I did want to ask you, when going through this list, was there anybody else that you thought outside of the Lions that you're like, man, like their ranking is a little egregious, like they're being drastically overlooked for what they actually have in terms of talent?
Yeah, for me, man, it's going to be the Bills, right? Just because, like I mentioned him earlier, but Matt Milano is right there, probably a teeny under a Fred Warner for me in terms of just ranking the positions, ranking the players in their position, but so assuming he can get back to where he was, he got a season-ending injury last year. So if he can get back to where he was before that, I think the Bills should be higher because they got, like, the Bears are way up there.
Yeah.
And I know I'm a certified Bears hater. Like, I know I keep, but like, what are we doing? They have TJ Edwards and they have Tremaine Edmonds. But like, Tremaine Edmonds didn't have like that good of a year last year. I don't really
did, though. I feel like TJ was pretty good last year.
He went off, like he played well, but I'm like, that's really high. It's funny that Jelani Tavai is the first player named with the Patriots being ranked 4th overall. Shout out Matt Patricia for just not getting that right at all, because I mean, what are we doing here, man? You guys are on the same defense. But yeah, I would say the Bills. I think the Bills would be higher for me, higher than some of these teams where I'm like, I don't know, man.
Yeah, I feel you on that one. I'm going to be a little bit more nitpicky here, and I'm going to say the 49ers. And the Niners are literally 2 on this list behind the Jets. But Fred Warner alone, right? Like, it's kind of the same thing when it came down to the 49ers with their running backs in the last video that we did, where Christian McCaffrey does 99% of the heavy lifting for that running back group. And that was enough to have their running back group number 1. I feel like the same thing is true for Fred Warner, where he's that good of a linebacker. He is the best middle linebacker in football right now. And the only reason that you have him at 2 is because Dre Greenlaw is going to probably miss some time because of the injury that he had in the NFC Championship game. Like, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. On top of the fact that the Niners did still go out and sign Devondre Campbell, who was a very good linebacker as well, somebody that I think is going to fit in really well with that defense. So that tandem of Warner and Campbell next to each other is still going to allow the 49ers to do a lot of the things that I think they've been doing with that defense, and having 2 linebackers that can play at a high level. And then once Greenlaw is healthy, you add him into the mix, and that's a 3-headed monster that opposing offenses are going to have to deal with. I would have them a little bit higher than, I would have them at 1 and probably have the Jets slotted at 2. I do recognize that Quincy Williams had a really good year last year. I understand that CJ Mosley is a really talented linebacker as well, but I don't see anybody really, when looking at the NFL landscape, that's better than what the 49ers have in that linebacker core.
And I'll take it even a step further with Fred Warner, man. Like I've talked about how like there's a big gap between Patrick Mahomes and like the second best quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's as big as the delta with like the second one and Mahomes, whoever you want to pick for that position. There's, debate to be had there. But Fred Warner like is a good couple like inches, or however you want to phrase it, above the Roquan Smiths, the Demario Davises, the Matt Milanos. And those are all really good players, like borderline elite. But like I remember watching the game, like especially that second half of the NFC Championship game against the Niners, and I was just like, this dude is making all kinds of plays, man. Like against the pass, like fluid, can run with guys in the slot, can cover tight ends like Sam Laporta, but then he can get downhill, blow up guards in the gap, slip under guards and make tackles in the backfield, like knife in the backfield. He does it all. He's a true 3 down. Like you never take him off the field. And to me, like he really is. He's like one of one right now, and he has been for like a few years. So I'm with you there. I think they should be 1, but it's been a theme that people are really high on the Jets, and I keep going back, comparing them to that dream team that the Eagles assembled.
Yeah.
Right. That just blew up in smoke. Like I don't know, man. Like I like Quincy Williams and I like CJ Mosley, and they play behind a good defensive line. In particular, you got Quinnen Williams in there wreaking havoc, but in front of Fred Warner and Devondre Campbell and Dre Greenlaw when he's healthy, like y'all said, like, nah.
Yeah, I don't quite see it either. But before we get out of here, anybody else that you think is maybe underrated? I know we kind of talked about the Lions kind of being rated a little bit lower than we thought. Anybody else on this list that you're like, man, I can't believe they're all the way down there?
I mentioned the Bills. I think that the Saints could be a little bit higher, just because like Demario Davis is another one, man. He's been a dog since he got to New Orleans. Like, good Lord. Like even when the Saints have been not so good here in like the recent, past, he's still really good. Like you play the Saints and you like see him flying around with the hair and everything, and you're like, oh yeah, there's Demario Davis, and he looks like a creative player on Madden. Like he got the visor. I'm like, yeah, he's got
the visor, he's got the sleeve. Like
that's what I'm saying.
This was 2K. Good. Demario Davis spent all his VC on cosmetics.
Exactly, and he looks good doing it. Like creative player linebacker. But yeah, I would put the Saints a little higher. They're another one. I really like too. Compared, I brought this name up, and I wish the Lions got him that year. I can't remember when he went. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah for Cleveland, man. And then they picked up Jordan Hicks. So like you have 2 that defense is going to be good again, really good. And those are 2 linebackers that can do a lot, man. Owusu-Koramoah, JOK, how they call him in Cleveland. I really like him. Like that's a modern linebacker, like almost in that build of like a Deion Buchanan from back in the day during those Arizona defenses. But JOK can thump too, though. Like that's what I'm saying. He like similar to Brian Branch, like he plays heavier and more violent than his size indicates. You know what I mean?
No, 100%. I think another team that I would throw in the mix that for me that like I was like, oh man, they're a little bit lower than I thought. Not by a lot, but just a little bit lower than I thought is the Bengals. I think the Bengals have like a really nice linebacker core with Logan Wilson, Jermaine Pratt. Those guys, like Logan Wilson specifically, I think if Jack Campbell can get, like, that's someone that I look at, like if Jack Campbell can get to that level, man, this Lions defense was really going to be humming by having that type of player. Logan Wilson is so fluid in the pass game. He's really efficient in the run game, being able to make stops and things of that nature. So that's another one. I think linebacker is definitely one of those groups where I think there's certain position groups within the NFL that kind of get lost in the shuffle if you're not just talking about one guy. And so I think that's where like lists like this really come into play, because you start realizing like, no, they do have 2 or 3 guys, or there's some really good depth on some of these teams. Specifically talking about the Lions, I think now that they're going to be more in the spotlight, I do think you'll start to see this linebacker core get a lot more credit for what they do on this defense. I know you're going to have Aiden Hutchinson, second overall pick. I know you're going to have Terrion Arnold, number one corner on a lot of people's board that may get a lot of attention as well. You're still going to have Brian Branch, who is seen as a future all-pro type candidate. But these linebackers should not get lost in the shuffle because they do a lot of the dirty work and they do a lot of the things that have helped this defense, like you were pointing out earlier, go from being like one of the worst defenses in the league to being more respectable, if in no other area than the run game.
Yeah, and they're going to continue to be an integral part, man. And I'm just excited to watch them play behind, because this is going to be the best defensive tackle tandem that Alex Anzalone's seen in his career, since playing like a full like slate of snaps as a linebacker, like an off-ball linebacker like he has here in Detroit. And then you pair that, hopefully Jack Campbell starts to process a little quicker, starts to, read his keys and get downhill and make decisions quicker, because then his game will take off and he's just going to be making more and more plays. So yeah, that's going to be a fun one to watch. And there's going to be competition too, like for that, who's going to play that third linebacker. And, when they are on the field, like we mentioned earlier, it's two linebackers typically in base these days, just with the nature of personnel, with so many receivers on the field and pass catchers. But yeah, I can't wait. It's going to be fun to see just how it develops as the year goes on, because like Aaron Glenn talked about, he's going to run a lot of the things he wants to run now.
Mm-hmm.
Like in terms of like, hopefully, like with the personnel he now has. And I hope that translates into setting, like, because I think Jack Campbell can blitz. We know Derek Barnes can blitz.
Yeah.
Let's create some like havoc back there. You know what I mean? Let's force some turnovers and really get things going. That's where my brain goes when I think about the linebacker unit and its trajectory.
Well said, man. I think we can definitely leave it there. So we want to hear from you guys in the comment section. What do you guys think about where the Lions linebacker core is ranked currently at PFF? Number 22 overall, do you think that's too high, too low? Do you think that's just right? Do you think there are things that this group still needs to prove? Also, what do you think is the best unit on this defense right now? If you had to say which group it is when looking at, defensive line, edge, linebacker, corners, safeties, like where do you think, how would you rank those position groups? Let us know that in the comment section below as well. And like we stated at the beginning of this video, if you are looking for any more content related to the Lions, if you've heard that, like, man, I heard certain people on certain interviews, what was said, did anything good come out of that? Definitely go check out pridedetroit.com. I believe Jeremy even has a recap of episode 1 of Receivers. So if you don't have Netflix, but you want to know what happened in the first episode, go to pridedetroit.com. There's a little breakdown for you over on the website as well. Any other thing that you're looking for in terms of video content, you can find all of that here on the POD YouTube channel. All you have to do is hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, make sure you like this video as well. And that's going to keep you tuned in and keep you seeing all of the video content that we continue to have over on the YouTube channel. So with all of that said, I'm Miko. He's Morgan. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch, and we will be sure to catch you guys in the next one.